Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Hi, Jeff, Jonathan, Ellen, Carl, Ricardo. We got a group here. Nice group. Joey. I feel like, and I'm dating myself here. I feel like that woman on Romper Room from the 80s. Hands up. Anyone feel me? All right. I'm in good company. I'm in good company. All right. Uh, thanks everyone for joining here. Just hands up, first timers. All right, awesome. Carl, John, Joey, Jeff. Good stuff. I'll give my little preamble here. I do this every week. I've been with the NSA now over a year ago. I was running two JSCs. I assume all you guys are coming from the NeverSearchAlone community because that's mostly where I've been, um, promoting, if you will. Anyway, so I'm familiar with the playbook, the NSA playbook. My JSCs that I moderate have since moved on, but my background's in recruiting. For the past 12 years, I've been working with primarily early stage startups and helping them hire, running my own full desk boutique recruiting firm. In a former life, prior to 2012, I was in software product development and product management, and I built a lot of stuff. And anyway, I do this every week, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. We'll see how the conversation goes. Super interactive. So don't feel like you need to be a fly on the wall. I'm here to share my insights for what it's worth, my perspective as a recruiter, to give some insight, shine some light on, this black box of a recruiting or hiring process, at least in my experience. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I can give you my perspective as a recruiter that's been on that side, having interviewed thousands of candidates and worked with dozens of hiring managers and companies over the past 12 years or so. So that's my preamble. Format, just raise your hand or just holler out the question, old school, or drop it in the chat, and we'll go from there. All right, who wants to start? And by the way, if you guys don't come with questions, I'm going to ask you guys questions because I'm building a product right now and I can use your guys' perspective. So if you guys don't have questions, I'm going to ask you guys questions. This time won't go to waste. John.
Hey, feel free to lob out any product questions you want. I'll give you at least one person's perspective on it. But I am kind of curious. I think there's probably a better answer than, everyone, anyone's response is basically their opinion on how to do this. But I was talking to a guy in my JSC this morning, and he's been advised by, a headhunter group that, is active on NSA. And one of the things that they told him to do is in direct opposite, kind of direction to what I was directed to do on my resume. And that is, I was told basically just, dude, keep the bullet points short, tight, keep them numerical, prove it, and move on. Like nothing fancy, none of the, keep it buzz free light, if that makes sense. But he was actually told, like, create a small paragraph for each of your, job opportunities, or sorry, not opportunities, the roles you've had, and then do the bullets. And I'm just curious, like, what's your take on the right way to format that stuff?
Yeah, yeah. I think I'll start off by responding that there's no silver bullet, right? I mean, you can look at the literature out there on how to write a resume, and there's books out there, there's like seminars you can go to. Like, there's no one way to do it. But I'll give you my opinion as a recruiter because I think the formula, I think the reason why resumes are important is because it's sort of that conversation piece that it's basically representing you out there in the world, right? Until you have a phone call or there's some actual point of contact where you're engaging in a conversation. And so that resume is sort of resume, LinkedIn profile, it's representing you largely digitally out there in the world, right? And so my take as a recruiter that reads a lot of resumes is you have to make the resume easy to consume for the recruiter. I would say initially for the recruiter and then maybe secondary the hiring manager. right? And so how do you make it easy to consume and meaningful? Like there's a million different ways to do it. But for me, there's certain things that I look for. And I'm not going to cover everything on in my response here because I've covered a lot of it before. But I'll touch on it because it's really important. The recruiter has to make a case for you, right? And the easier that
Mhm.
you can make it for the recruiter to make a case for you is going to be, you're taking off the workload from the recruiter, and the likelihood of you getting prematurely disqualified increases. So how do you do that? I think, just simply what you mentioned as far as like no nonsense, I think that's best. So I would reduce the amount of filler words or superlatives from your resume. When you put a bunch of superlatives in, it's like reading fiction. Not that people are lying, but it's like reading fiction. Like it doesn't need to be flowery. Like I need the facts,
Right.
right? And I need the facts. Like and to the extent that you can quantify it, it makes it easier for me to zero in on it, right? And so I think what the other thing I think you were kind of alluding to, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't know if you were alluding to this or not, but in the professional section for each, let's say each work experience for a given company and a given title, what I need as a recruiter is I need context because just to have a standalone accomplishment is a lot of times it's not adequate. And a lot of times in a given bullet point for an accomplishment, a lot of times people will conflate too much in a single bullet point. They'll conflate the accomplishment, they'll conflate the scope of responsibility, they'll conflate context around the company or the title or the scope of the role, and it's too much. As a recruiter, I need it simple. So what I'm looking for in, let's just say, a title in a company title section, is obviously you're going to put your company, you're going to put the
Yeah.
title,
Yeah.
but a lot of times I don't know the company. A lot of times, unless it's a household name, I don't know the company, so I don't have any context for the company. I don't know if they're mid market. I don't know if they're a 5-person startup. I don't know if they're an enterprise. Like a lot of times I won't know. And even if they were enterprise and they're a household name, I don't know the department you're working with because a lot of companies have subcultures within the different departments. So I might make some assumptions about what kind of culture Facebook is, but there might be a nuanced subculture in the department that you're in. So
Yeah.
the point is, I need that context. So I need
Right.
the context of the company, maybe a one or two liner about the company, who they are, who they serve, where do they fall in that maturity spectrum, right? Early stage, mid market, enterprise, blah blah blah. Like are they a PE owned firm, venture owned? Like what are they, right? Who are they
Okay.
serving? Yeah. And so once I have that context, then I need context around your title. So titles in and of themselves, they're a shortcut. They're a proxy to understanding scope and scope of responsibility. But they're only a shortcut. So I don't really know. Like I don't know what it means to be a senior director of product management. I mean, I kind of know, but it really depends on where you're holding that title, right? So I
Yeah.
want to understand the company, I want to understand the title, and by way of understanding the title, I would like to see scope of responsibility. People call it responsibilities, job duties, scope. That's largely what they call it. And then under that, then now I have the context. Now you've set the stage for the accomplishments.
Got it.
And then
Okay.
obviously, you guys know how to write an accomplishment. It has to be largely quantified, right? And quantified relative to something meaningful, right?
Right. Yep.
And and ideally, the accomplishment is quantified in a way that it's not just like a static data point, but there's some indication of trajectory, if that makes sense. So ideally, ideally.
Yep. Okay.
So yeah, I hope that helps.
It does. It does. It was interesting that he was kind of counseled away from what you just described. And I hadn't heard that before because, I have worked for a few companies that I don't expect people to know. I don't expect people to know who these companies are. So
Yeah.
somebody said, well, if people aren't going to know who they are, put it in there. I'm like, duh, yeah, great idea, right? So I did. Um, but anyway, I was just curious. So fire away on a product question. Fair is fair.
No, no, I didn't mean one for one. So, I'd love to tap your guys' brains. So, as a quick plug for what I'm working on, there's a lot of problems, as you guys are probably well aware, friction points, opportunities to improve the job seeker journey, as well as the other end, the hiring journey, right? And so we're working on some solutions that will help job seekers sort of help them market themselves and do a lot of the legwork associated with some of the artifacts that we create, CVs, resumes, marketing collateral, and things like that. So if anyone's interested, just message me on the side, and I can share a little bit more and maybe get you involved in what we're doing from a user
Cool.
standpoint. But yeah, ready for any questions. This time is for you guys. Want to make it efficient, effective for you guys.
Could I ask a question? I don't know where the raise hand button is. I don't know how this works. Can I
No
just?
worries. Yeah, yeah, please.
Okay.
Please,
Hi. Thank you for doing this.
for
I
sure.
appreciate it. I wanted to ask if I worked for a company in the past that was acquired and now the company has another name on my resume, should I use the name that the company is today?
Yeah, so that's a good question. As a recruiter, I would want to know that you were part of that acquisition. So if you were part of company A and you were there for X, whatever, a few years or whatever, and then that company A was acquired by company B, I want to know that. It's important for me to know that um, because you want to minimize assumptions, right? Especially if your tenure at company A was, relatively short, just as an example. And I would want to know that actually it was not that short because it was acquired by company B and you're still part of company B for the past 5 years. So your 6 month stint at company A is not really a 6 month stint because it was acquired. So if you can minimize opportunities where a recruiter or reader would have to make an assumption, that would be ideal. And not that you have to explain everything, you know. I'll give you an example. Sometimes there's a gap in your resume, right? Or maybe there was a short stint. It's not like you have to explain everything in detail. But if you just say, hey, there was a I don't know a massive riff due to XYZ, that's enough for me as a recruiter to not jump to any sort of other alternative negative assumptions when I see that short stint, right? So generally speaking, it's good to address some of the assumptions that a reader might draw from reading your resume.
So, like on the resume, would I, instead of saying the name of the company at that time next to my job title, would I just put the name of that company and then a like parentheses acquired by the name of the company today so that it's showing the relevance? Because that company doesn't exist anymore by that name. It
Right.
has another name. So I'm just thinking of how to write that on the resume because people might
Yeah.
be like, wait, what is that company? Or did you work for that specific brand? Maybe I should be very clear here and frank. Maybe that'll be helpful. So I worked for Time Inc., which is a magazine that still runs today, but I didn't work for the Time Inc. magazine brand at Time Inc. That company was acquired by Meredith. So now it goes by the name Meredith, or sometimes Meredith Dot, depending on how it looks on LinkedIn. So
Okay.
for people looking at my resume, if it says Time Inc., because it's still a relevant part of my experience, right? They're possibly going to assume Time Inc., the brand, the magazine brand, versus what the company used to be called. So I'm trying to figure out, should I say Meredith because it was the greater organization that I worked for, or should I
Yeah.
say Time Inc. because that's what it was called then, and then in parentheses acquired by Meredith?
Yeah. I mean, there's a million different ways to do it. One thought is that I'm not in that industry, but if did you say Meredith? So if Meredith is a commonly known name and people ascribe certain attributes to people that come from Meredith, that could be valuable in terms of showcasing that company name. I know Time because I'm a consumer. I know Time magazine, and so if you feel like the Time magazine name would be more attractive, especially if you're looking at opportunities that are outside of that world and nobody knows Meredith, then you might want to sort of showcase or highlight Time magazine maybe more prominently. But I think the point is that well, one, there's no single way to do it, but if you make it easy for the reader to understand what's going on with the acquisition, right? And kind of, I guess, which company you most identify with, right? Because if you're with company A, let's say you're with company A for a year, and now you're with company A or company B for another year, like you could kind of go either way, right? Like you could identify more with this company, and maybe it's to your benefit to do so because maybe it has a higher brand recognition or whatnot. And then you could just put, Meredith, but in parentheses, formerly Time or something like that, right? So there's a million different ways to do it, I think. But think about your audience, right? And think about minimizing assumptions, especially assumptions that might cast you in, a worse light, right? So that's kind of how I think about it a little bit.
Thank you.
Sure. I see some questions here in the chat. Okay, John. Yeah, I'll reach out to you, or if you could reach out to me, that'd be great too. But I don't know if this chat gets persisted after we get off here. Sherry.
Hi, I was wondering, I also have kind of a startup background. I was wondering what types of startups you work with and also what types of roles you're seeing um, that are, most in demand right now.
Yeah. So our book of business is quite different than what it was 2 years ago. But as capital is sort of, capital is not flowing as it used to these earlier stage startups. Um, what I'm seeing is, well, I'm seeing that there's more demand for obviously with folks that are a little bit more senior. So whether it's product engineering, there, what I'm seeing, maybe more anecdotally, is kind of a movement towards teams doing more with less. And I think there's pressure because of sort of the economic environment we're in, the lack of capital, the focus on profitability and unit economics. I think that also with AI, emerging AI, there's this growing expectation that teams can do more with less, especially knowledge workers, which I think is overrepresented in the NSA community. Um, but what is your background, Sherry?
I work with climate startups specifically. So I have kind of a generalist background. I've worked with climate accelerators, kind
Okay.
of, yeah, work in operations in the past.
What operations? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think one thing that I'm seeing is that there's a lot of pressure to do more with less, and there's a growing sort of question among leadership around how can we do more with less, and sort of the obvious thing for them to explore is like AI and how we can integrate that and how they can integrate that into their operations, their workflow, business development, sales, and so they're looking at ways that it can cut across the board. So I think, and I would love to hear from folks out there too. Is like, what are you guys seeing as far as companies or interviewers and their expectations around integrating or leveraging AI, and what skills they're looking for from folks to as they're hiring? Because that's always something I'm trying to keep a finger on the pulse of, because I think it's evolving. Um, but so if anybody has any ideas, I'd love to hear it. But hopefully that gives you some sense, Sherry. There's so much in the air right now, and there's a lot of moving pieces. I think when I talking to folks, I think one thing I do recommend is like, if you're not already doing so, like really immerse yourself in figuring out how you can do your function better or more effectively, either increasing capabilities or increasing capacity by using some of these emerging technologies. Because I think, and I've talked to, again, this is my own anecdotal sort of insight. I think the muscle that more people, more companies and more employers are going to be expecting of their team members is this muscle of being able to sort of allocate work. And before that was reserved for like managers, leadership, where they're allocating work to humans, to teams, human teams. But I think increasingly there's going to be a skill set that hiring teams are looking for, hiring managers, leaders, executives that are looking for is the ability for somebody to allocate work to non-humans. So if you think about your own domain of expertise, your own function, basically, how could you build something that will replace you or 80% of what you do? Those are the conversations that I hear going on a lot. And so if you're a product manager, I'm seeing like product managers are increasingly being more enabled to do more. Like they can whip out an MVP without going to an engineer. They can design their UI without consulting necessarily with a designer. And not that it's going to be 100%, but if they can get it to 80%, 90%, it might be good enough just to move quickly. And so this idea of maybe being less of a specialist, I think I think is I think that there's something going on there, right? If you can think of it, just using the product manager as an example, I think, if you're a product manager now that has some design sensibilities and you can use some of these tools and you can get a design to 80%, 80, 90, whatever percent, you don't have to rely on a designer, maybe you're at the earlier stages yet. Or maybe you're relying less on a designer, a human designer, right? As an example. Tim, you had a quick question?
Yeah. Actually, a quick comment. There was an
Yeah.
interesting thread online on Mastodon in the last couple days to your point of there is this individual that was talking about how I don't need engineers. I put together this product using this tool set. People found this product offering that he found and exploited all the security vulnerabilities in it, and he had to take it down. So, yes, using AI can be helpful, but it is not, you can't just blindly follow it,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
guy learned the hard way, and he's like, man, there's some real weird people out there that would do this. I don't understand. Anyway, it was hilarious. It was much laughter. Uh,
Sometimes we're like
yeah,
caveman with fire. Like,
right. Yeah.
what
Oh,
is this,
try to
right?
create the
Yeah.
wheel, right?
Yeah.
So Eric, let's pull on this thread in regards to using new technology. I got an email today going, "Hey, we'd love
Oh,
for
sorry, Tim. So
yeah,
before you go on, Sherry,
yeah,
did I answer your question? Was there
oh
any
yeah,
sort of follow up before we move on?
Yeah, no, I think he answered it. I think just from a generalist background, it's been difficult for me to kind of find the right role. So I'm in a general manager role now. So I'm kind of looking for roles like that or chief of staff position. So was also wondering, like, you're talking about more leadership roles, so that resonates. But wondering anything more on there on like the generalist side as well.
Sorry, you're when you're using the word generalist, it's prompting me to want to share something because I know that I've been talking about using this example of a product manager and just sort of these that product manager being maybe more of a generalist now that this person can do more of this and that. I still believe in it. I think this is consistent with my experience that companies and hiring managers, they still hire specialists for the roles that they're looking for. And so maybe it's not articulated as such, but I think a lot of times they are looking for somebody to fit their specific role. But if you can bring sort of a learning aptitude, and you're able to learn fast and you're not afraid to learn, I think that's just generally speaking, that's a good asset to bring to the table. That's something I think highly of when as a recruiter, right? And so, especially with earlier stage companies, because for earlier stage companies, the problems that they're trying to solve today are quite different from the problems that they're going to be trying to solve tomorrow. And they're not just going to displace their entire staff to find specialized talent to deal with the farmer's problem. They need team members that can adapt to the problem of the day. So,
Thank
all right,
you.
Sherry, thanks. Tim, sorry, go ahead.
No worries. No, we needed to follow up with Sherry, make sure she got her answers clarified, man. No worries, no worries.
Yeah.
So I got an email today going, hey, we'd love to talk to you about this role you applied to. But hey, as the first stage, we'd like for you to have this screening call with our AI interviewer.
How'd you feel about that?
Sorry?
How'd you feel about
I
that?
don't like it at all because here I am going to invest this time, one, and then probably not hear anything back, right? Two, now you're going to let your AI learn on me and my input and my information, which I take issue with. So now I'm in this quandary of, do I push back going, hey, can I talk to someone first to see even if my time is worth the investment for this role, right?
Yeah. Can I
And
just ask you a quick question?
yeah,
What if you had an AI agent that you could say, "Hey, go talk to that AI agent."
it did cross my mind, Eric. I was not going to bring it up here.
With Notebook LM, create a
Right?
podcast based on your background.
Sorry, Amber, what did you say?
No, I've seen people do similar stuff with Notebook LM, where you
Yeah.
like, especially using the NeverSearchAlone framework, you can like upload your candidate market fit, the job description, your
Yeah.
resume, your LinkedIn, and get it to like all in a project in Notebook, and then create a podcast about yourself.
Yeah. In fact, I thought I did that this morning. Did I not send the link? Anyway, I don't know. I was just looking at the community. Yeah, I did that because I have like 30 plus episodes now over the past year or so, and I've transcribed it. It's all in YouTube, and I threw it in a Notebook LM, and it created this, like you said, like a little podcast. By the way, if nobody, okay, if nobody knows that what Amber and I are talking about, go to notebooklm.google.com. You can put a bunch. You think of it as a notebook. You could put a bunch of documents in there, and whatever documents you put in there, you can create a podcast of these two synthetically, and it's actually pretty good. These synthetic podcast hosts that are basically discussing the content that you put in there. So it's a great way if you want to learn something. You could just listen to it, whatever content you put in there, you could have them create a podcast about it and you just listen to it at whatever speed you want. And it gives you a good way to kind of learn new things. It's actually pretty handy. Anyway, we digress. Sorry, Tim.
Kind of building on that a little bit, I was in a thing earlier today, and somebody was doing that to prepare for interviews.
Yeah.
Because I guess there's
Uh,
a beta version of it where you can like insert your own questions into the podcast.
yeah. A lot of use cases for that. It's pretty handy. But go ahead, Tim. What were you saying about your getting interviewed by an AI?
Yeah, it makes me feel gross. I'm like, why are you wasting my time? Right?
Did you actually call it? What was the medium? Like was it a phone call?
No, I haven't even dug down into it. This is just a LinkedIn response to a job app I submitted going, and it's basically like, hey, go talk to our AI first. I'm like, and there's no guarantee I'm gonna hear back. So why spend the time and effort and spin the wheels for it, right? So
Hmm.
yes, to you and Amber's point, I could probably just throw another AI on it and go, here, handle this for me. You guys gonna go down this road, we're gonna go down this road too, right?
Yeah, I'd be curious. I mean, I'd be curious to see what they have set up, and just my guess is that it's probably a bit unhuman, inhuman, not
Yeah.
inhumane, but unhuman,
Inhumane. Okay, we'll go with that.
inhumane. Um,
Neopolis.com is apparently their AI interview partner.
okay, all right. Well, if you end up doing it, I'd love to hear what your experience is about, whether it's on next week or whatever. But uh, okay, I'm just going through the thing here. What tips do you have on filling the job seeker's top of the funnel? And what do you recommend for identifying staffing agency errors to increase surface area? So Neil, what tips do I have on filling the job seekers top of the funnel? Oh, so just building top of the funnel and getting exposure. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, gosh, this is multi-pronged approach, right? Like I still recommend like applying. I think a lot of job postings are time sensitive, right? So if there's a way that you can automate, whatever alerts you have through Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever, um, to the extent that you can get your resume sooner rather than later is great. But definitely, it's not a single prong approach. You have to do the networking work and connecting with the right kinds of people, largely through LinkedIn. LinkedIn is sort of a good way to connect with folks, but you have to know how to cut through the noise, or at least cut through their noise, right? Because a lot of folks get inundated. Just a short recommend, the short sort of playbook or motion that I recommend is, once you identify the people that you want to connect with, don't just do a LinkedIn connection, although that's part of it. I would try to get to know them a little bit better digitally, like through whatever posts they might be interacting with or any posts that they're actually authoring, and engage with them around some of that content. It could be a learning opportunity for you, but it can also be a good way to kind of showcase, your perspective and opinions on the topics that are being discussed. And so, and then name recognition, right? Once they start seeing your name a little bit more, then you hit them with the connection request, and then at least there's a little bit more familiarity there. And then once you connect with them, obviously, if there's an opportunity to take it offline to a phone call or whatnot, that could be sort of the next step. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. My recommendation is to lead with some value and some insight, as opposed to leading with an ask, because all too often people lead with an ask. And if you're always hit up by vendors or folks that are trying to pitch you on this or that, it's like it gets kind of there's a fatigue there, right? So yeah, just a few thoughts there.
Can
Um,
I follow up a little bit, Eric, on
yeah,
the point of leading with value and insight? Sort of my question on that is sort of like, how do you do that effectively?
yeah. So I mean, um, you know, when somebody asks genuine questions about you, in the interest of getting to know you, I think that's the first stepping stone to kind of understanding how you can add value, or how they can add value, or how you can add value, right? So if the more you know about a person, the more you can infer like what they might be interested in or what might resonate with them. And so if you can add value, it doesn't also have to be professional value either. It could just be like it could be personal value, right? Like it doesn't have to be like always business related. You can appeal to somebody emotionally and logically. Like it's not just about like, yeah, it's not just about business interests. What I found. You
Yeah,
know,
thanks.
so
And the headhunters
um,
and staffing agencies, that any tips on finding and reaching out to the right people in the right way?
say again, Neil.
Staffing agencies and headhunters,
Yeah.
finding the right one, reaching out to them in the right way.
Yeah, so you might have better luck starting with the recruiters versus generally the agency, right? I mean, because the agencies are made up of actual recruiters, and a lot of recruiters work fairly independently. A lot of recruiters work fairly independently. Like there isn't a lot of times they get a recruiter gets assigned a search or a client, and they're handling that. That's one thing about recruiters, is that they tend to be not so collaborative. Um, and so yeah, reaching out to the specific, building a relationship with the specific recruiter, I think is the way to go. Versus top down, like trying to get in with a company, so to speak. Recruiters are third party recruiters are motivated by finding the right talent to build a pipeline for their current portfolio of positions they need to fill. But third party recruiters are also interested in building longer term relationships. Typically, because a lot of times they have a portfolio of companies, and so if they can't place you with one, they may be able to place you with another, and if not today, maybe tomorrow, and then if not tomorrow as a hire, There's also this interest on the part of third-party recruiters that you might become a hiring manager, so you might become a client. And so anything that can signal, I mean, you could play off of that, right? As someone like, especially if you've built teams before and you've worked with recruiters before while you were on the inside. Um, I think to the astute recruiter that's thinking longer term, that could be a way to kind of get their attention. So that's sort of the mindset I think about a lot of times when when someone is referred to me, and it's like, okay, well, I'll try to get to know them. If I don't have an immediate opportunity or lead for them, um, I'll build a relationship with them, particularly if in their next role they may be building a team, right? And so that might, again, what I'm trying to do here, Neil, is just kind of share with you sort of the motivations, the incentive structures for recruiters, and that way you can understand that and perhaps play to that in reaching out or your interaction with them. The other thing in terms of identifying the right recruiters a lot of recruiters are sorry, my camera is kind of weird here. A lot of recruiters work within specific industries, within specific functions, within specific regions, and so you want to find the right recruiter across those dimensions. Ideally, you're working with a recruiter that's more senior, right? Somebody that's been around the block. Ideally, somebody that has line of sight to the hiring manager, because there's all kinds of different insulating layers, largely depending on the seniority of the recruiter. So if you're working with an entry level recruiter, the chances of them having line of sight and direct communication with the hiring manager is probably less. Hope that helps, Neil.
Thanks.
Jonathan, would company X acquired by company Y? Yeah, it's simple. I think the point is just to have it on there, right? You wouldn't be surprised on how many times, like I've read enough resumes where if somebody put something like that, I'd understand what's going on. But something is infinitely more than nothing. And when there's nothing, then I jump to conclusions or I make assumptions. I'm almost compelled to make assumptions. Let's see. Ricardo.
Hi, Eric. I have a question about building relationships as you were talking about that, but in the specific point in time in which a recruiter conversation for a process has already happened. Do you have any advice on building a good relationship throughout the process from that point onwards?
With respect to, like, let's say, for example, the recruiter you might be working with.
Yeah, for a position. So already have first conversation with the recruiter. I know I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
What is possible to do within that scenario in terms of building a successful pitch for the role with that recruiter, internal recruiter for a company?
Yeah. So I'm hearing a few questions here. So as far as building a relationship, let's say with a recruiter or a hiring manager, chances are you're going to have more touch points with the recruiter than you would the hiring manager, depending on the size of the company and the recruiting process, right? A recruiter can really be a big advocate and champion on your behalf if you play it right. And so, how do you play it right? Well, you have to build a relationship. Well, how do you build a relationship? I think for me, the people that have built good relationships with me is that they connected with me not just on a professional level, but they've connected with me on a personal level, right? And so, how do you connect with somebody on a personal level? You start talking about personal stuff, right? When the time is right. It's not like you want to tell your whole life story, non-professional life story in that first contact, right? But it's a spirit of transparency. It's a spirit of sharing. It's a spirit of vulnerability. that creates surface area for you to connect with somebody. And not just a recruiter, right? It could be just any human being, right? So those are the people that have connected with me. The other thing too is to the extent that you can understand the recruiter's sort of mindset, mentality, incentive, motivations, like you can kind of speak to that, right? And what I mean by that is if you're working with an internal recruiter, you think about what are they incentivized by? Well, they're incentivized by finding the right person and placing that person, and then that person succeeding so that they look good, right? And so to the extent that you can position yourself not just as a candidate, but as a partner in what that recruiter is trying to accomplish, now you're not just a candidate, like you're a partner almost, right? Like you're elevating your status. And the thing is that people don't do that just by sheer volume. Like people rarely do that. Maybe 1 out of 10, maybe, of the people that I talk to really position themselves like that. And so right off the bat, if you position yourself like that, you're standing out. You're leaving more of an impression, memorable impression. So yeah, just learn, practice learning how to connect with people, have a good conversation, be genuinely curious, you know. I think those are the kinds of folks that, again, this is just me, but like I personally connected with and related with. And, you do that, you don't just do that, conversations and relationships are not built in, one touch point. They're built over time. And with a recruiter, typically, if that person is shepherding you through the process, you're going to have multiple points of contact with that recruiter. So your opportunity to build a relationship with that recruiter there's a higher probability of you building a deeper relationship with the recruiter over that process than the hiring manager. And the idea is that if you could build a good relationship with that recruiter, they can start championing you and representing you internally, at those, because they meet with the hiring manager. Again, going back to, you want to work with the recruiter that has line of sight to the hiring manager, the one that's sitting in the meetings with the hiring manager, not the one that's getting orders from an account manager or some other insulating layer, right? So, and then the pitch, right? It's not just one pitch. You're pitching yourself over time. So consistency is important. Having consistency in your messaging, what you stand for, is important. Whatever you stand for, make sure it's simple so you can repeat yourself and nobody gets confused, you know. And I think it kind of goes back to the candidate market fit statement, right? It's sort of part of it. You can't be everything to everybody. Yeah, you can't be everything to everybody. Okay, I see some messages here in the chat. Anthony, you had an AI interview a few weeks ago with the company's platform. Yeah. It was about as superficial as the standard first round, but slightly more awkward. I think Anthony, you and I are chatting, I think, this afternoon. Would love to hear more about it. All right. We're bumping up on time here. It feels like things are slowing down. You guys have any other questions?
Maybe I missed this because I joined pretty late.
Tim, no worries.
Is the job market slowing down at this point because of the uncertainty? Or, I know you mentioned the doing more with less kind of thing, but um, I guess is the number of job openings, sorry, the real job openings, I guess, is that going up or down, I guess?
Maybe I'll turn that on you guys. Like, what are you guys seeing? Because, I try to be conscious of like what media I'm consuming. I find that it's not entirely good for my mental health. Especially with just how volatile everything is, whether it's the stock market, whether it's political news, whatever, right? It's just so volatile. And so, I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of different pressures and they're all pushing in different ways. And sometimes, it ends up going one way one day or another. But long story short, I don't know. I mean, I can give you my opinion. I think there's going to be some contraction, and everybody's talking about, impending recession and this and that. But I don't know. I mean, I know there's a lot of cuts at the federal level, and so that's going to be even more talent that you might be competing with. I don't know. I think the important thing is just being able to keep focused on what your game plan is, and finding good support groups, and if the NSA is your JSC is a good support group, by all means lean on it, to sort of ride those emotional ups and downs, or those concerns with uncertainty. I don't know if that's what you're asking, Tim, but that's what I'm giving you.
Okay. I mean, that's helpful. I guess I'm fortunate in that I don't need to look for a job. And I guess maybe the
Yeah.
question's kind of like, should I even start um looking, or should I just kind of wait till things are less uncertain?
That's a good question. It's almost like that question, should I start the company now when there's a downtick in the economy and capital is not flowing?
Right.
Some people pride themselves. I mean, there's an argument to be made for starting a company when it's most tough,
Hmm.
because when things get easier, you're just going to be like the rising tide will shoot you
True.
like a rocket into space. I don't know. I'm coming up with an analogy here, but
Hmm.
so I don't know. Or maybe you take the time off and go enjoy life, or figure out a new hobby if you have the means.
Hmm.
Yeah, Tim, if you really, instead of aggressively looking for a job, you could think of, is there a project or an outcome that you want that you would make part of your headline for your
Hmm.
resume? And you could go after that if that sounds like a more fun thing to do at the time. So I can promise you that the application process and hammering your head against that part of it, that is only fun for a very select number of people. So
A
perhaps the project
masochist.
side of it would be a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah. That's helpful. Thank you.
Mhm. If you want a flip on the AI assistant thing, and I promise this is really quick, I tried to call my wife from a landline the other day, and because she's on Google Fi, they have introduced an automated AI response agent that you talk to, and I had never spoken to that before, and I must have sounded like the stupidest person on earth. So if that was the person who was also going to handle a job application for me, can't even imagine.
All right. Victor, do you have a question before we wrap up here?
Oh, yeah. I think I asked this question before, but I don't remember what you said last time. So I know that you talk about increasing the contact surface area, but just for the case when you have not contacted the recruiter, but the only contact surface area is your resume, your application.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming as a recruiter, you are going through 100, 200 resumes and you're just spending, I don't know, 10 seconds. What are you
Sure.
looking at?
What am I
What
looking at on a resume?
on a resume and you say, oh, this is good. Well, what is it?
The first thing I look at is the summary section. If it's blocky, if it's a big giant block of text with a ton of superlatives, I get lost and I move on. So it's a missed opportunity if that section is not written well. So if I move
Okay.
on, I'll scan the company names, the titles, and I'll look at tenure, the dates,
Okay.
and then I'll look at
Tenure on each company.
yeah, just scan. So my first pass is really looking for any red flags, typically.
Mm,
At some point, I'm going to not be looking for the red flags, but be looking for the fit.
okay.
And then after I look for the fit, I'll look for what makes this person special. So you think about it that way. The first pass is really anything to disqualify, to get that stack of 500 resumes down to 50. Then I look for fit. Are they checking the boxes? Okay, great. These 10 people, whatever, 5 people check the boxes. Okay, of these 10 people, who am I going to select for that cohort of 3 or 4 people that I'm going to send to the hiring manager? then I'm looking for not just for fit, but I'm looking for what's special about each of these people. So disqualification, red flags, fit, and then what's special.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I hope that helps you guys. Yeah, we went full hour today, or almost full hour. If anyone wants to learn more about what we're doing, and you want to participate in it largely as a user, let me know. Reach out to me, and I'm happy to work with you. Tim, Ralph. Who else do I have on my radar already? Yeah, you guys are already on my radar. I'll be reaching out to you guys soon because we got things cooking on our side here. So, thank you guys. See you next week. Tell a friend. Have a good week.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.